Daddy, why is there so much dead mommies and daddies in kids' movies?
I'm Rhodes Bailey, and this is the premiere, or should I say inaugural, episode of the Asylum South podcast.
I'm Laurin Manning Gandy.
I'm Chris Kenny.
With us also is Jessica Lathrin, Mike McCauley, and the man with the plan from the Jam Room, Zach Thomas, in the booth. Today, we will talk to flag expert Ted Kaye about the one bright, shining moment of unity in 2020 when the entire Palmetto State banded together with one voice to say, we hate this new flag design and we're not going to take it. Also on the podcast, we answer big questions from little people, like why every Disney film kills off parents. But first, it's a new year, it's a new administration, and a new South Carolina legislature, so let's check in with what's happening right now. All right, guys, well, it's not only a new administration in Washington, D.C., but we've got a new session for the South Carolina legislature. What are you guys following this week? What have you been paying attention to? I'll start. This week in the state, there was a story by John Monk. I believe it was by John Monk.
It was.
And there is a plan in the legislature to increase the number of seats on the South Carolina Supreme Court, or stack the court. We currently have 5 justices, and they want to make it 7. And oddly enough, this idea was put forth after the big school voucher case that got struck down by the state Supreme Court. I wonder if there's a coincidence there. What's odd is, one of the arguments that the Speaker of the House, Jay Lucas, put forward is he said, well, we need more diversity. We need more people represented from Beaufort and Lexington, which is so strange to me. That's not how we pick judges.
He acts like the legislature doesn't pick the judges.
Well, what's odd is, well, first of all, we're going to be losing 2 Supreme Court justices within the next few years anyway, because they're going to age out. And if you don't already know this, you retire at 72, mandatory retirement for judges in South Carolina. But, by that rationale, geographic diversity, we would need 46 judges, one for every county.
Look, there's 3 reasons to add judges to a court, right? One is there's too much work, not enough people to do the work. I don't think anybody's saying that's what's happening here. Another reason might be, you don't like the decisions you're getting from the court. And that sort of implicates the independence of a co-equal branch of government. And so, the third reason I would say might be sort of like a Merrick Garland situation, right? Where so there was a wrongful taking or appropriation of a seat that but that's not what's going on here in South Carolina. The legislature elects the judges. And so I think it's really difficult to interpret this bill as anything other than an effort to influence the independence of the court and perhaps add justices that in the legislature's infinite wisdom might, decide cases more to their liking. I think, as a lawyer, I'm troubled by it.
Well, it's also kind of funny because these same people politically would be very angry if they increased the seats on the U.S. Supreme Court. They would call it court stacking, packing, and they'd cry foul. But that's what they want to do here because they want a different result. At least that's what.
I mean, there is some argument to be made about corrective justice, right? I mean, I think when Democrats in Washington talk about adding justices to the U.S. Supreme Court, that flows directly from the theft of the seat that Merrick Garland should have sat in. But that's just not the situation we have here. So if it's not too much work, and if there's not some injustice to be created, I don't know what conclusion to draw other than this is an effort by the legislature to intimidate or influence the ideological direction of the court more to their liking.
I certainly agree with that.
I mean, I can't believe that y'all don't really believe that the Republican Party is concerned about diversity.
No, diversity is in we need more people from Lexington and more people from Beaufort, 2 Republican voting areas. That's what. Oh, well, Well, also diversity when it comes to geography makes a difference if it's in a legislature. You're representing people from certain areas, but it doesn't have anything to do with judicial interpretation.
Can I try to draw a through line?
Please do.
We were discussing ever so briefly. This was on my list of things that I'm following, and we talked before the podcast, and I knew you were going to bring it up. But in my mind, I have a tough time separating this court packing bill from another bill that was introduced, which would essentially do away with the South Carolina Election Commission and turn it over to an elected partisan, the Secretary of State. And of course, we've just come through a cycle where we've seen, to varying degrees, some states, have partisans who, frankly, performed admirably. I think you have to give the folks in Georgia a whole lot of credit for acting with real courage and acting as true independent election administrators, not purely as partisans. However, here in South Carolina, we have, an election commission that's appointed, and we have a professional staff that was, I think, quite correctly in this past election cycle, blew the whistle and urged legislators to take steps that they probably did not want to take in terms of making voting more accessible in light of the COVID pandemic. And so I just have trouble, looking at these two bills, not thinking back to the 2020 election cycle and thinking maybe the Republican legislature might be a little upset that our election officials were a little too independent and that we had a Supreme Court that was willing to hear some of these election cases. As a matter of disclosure, I should say that I brought one of those cases in the South Carolina Supreme Court.
Yeah, it's weird because I think of all the things in South Carolina that we get wrong in our state government, and two of the things that I think we tend to do well with are the election commission and the way that we select judges. So let's go break them.
It's not a perfect system, but I do like that the legislature appoints judges rather than a popular vote, because that's how you end up with a bunch of Roy Moores.
Right.
Well, Laurin, what else has been on your mind? LPMG?
Something I've been thinking about is I feel like we've all been through this collective trauma of the Trump administration, and it feels like being a sore winner to keep talking about it, but I'm not done processing it yet, y'all.
What is it? What is it that you say sore winner, but I
feel like we ought to just move on, but I'm not ready to yet.
Why?
Well, because I don't want to give Trump the satisfaction of thinking that he's still in our heads.
You're not a fan of light treason?
I guess I'm not.
Well, the last 4 years has definitely given us a lot to talk about, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk about it. But as divided as we are as a state and nation, there was one thing we really agreed on, and that was that the new flag design sucked. The toilet brush myth tree, what I thought was a puny crescent. And that's why we got together to talk to Ted Kaye, author of Good Flag, Bad Flag. He is the leading vexillologist, that's the study of flags, in North America. And let's check in and check out our conversation with him. Our guest today is Ted Kaye. He's the author of Good Flag, Bad Flag, and is secretary of the North American Vexillology Association. That's NAVA. He lives in Portland. Now, vexillology, which some people have problems saying, is the study of flags. Ted, will you tell us a little bit about vexillology?
Vexillology is the study of flags, but as my wife likes to say, it's vexillology because it's vexing and silly.
I've been working hard on a vexing joke, and clearly your wife beat me to it.
Indeed. But flags themselves are not silly at all. Flags are deeply important to people because they symbolize our sense of belonging to groups, and that's something all humans share. And your questions about flags will run deep to people in South Carolina and in Columbia.
And Ted, as you've heard, there's been a little bit of controversy recently as a committee worked to come up with a uniform design for the South Carolina state flag. But let's start with flags themselves and what makes a good flag.
Well, talking about good flags really is a misnomer for my book. Good flag, bad flag really means effective flag design, ineffective flag design, but that's not nearly as catchy as good flag, bad flag. But talking about flag design follows the idea of form follows function. That if we talk about what a flag actually does, that helps inform what the design looks like. Flags are usually meant to be seen at a distance. They're a piece of cloth that's moving, seen from both sides, and meeting the criteria of being recognizable and memorable as seen at a distance means that the design of the flag needs to follow some basic principles. And those basic principles are simplicity, meaningful symbolism, few colors, no lettering or seals, and distinctiveness. And each of those we could go into in more detail, but the South Carolina flag nails all 5 of those criteria. It's a wonderful, very effective flag. In fact, in my book, Good Flag, Bad Flag, I use the South Carolina flag as an example of a flag that does not use lettering or seals and conveys its meaning fully without needing to write on the flag.
So easy to recognize, but without complications or letters or seals.
Letters and seals are both complexity, and they're also inappropriate because flags are graphic symbols. If you have to write the name of your place on your flag, then your symbolism has failed. I contrast South Carolina with South Dakota. South Dakota places its seal on a flag and then writes the name of its state around the seal. In fact, the word South Dakota appears twice on the flag. That flag is still indistinguishable from 23 other states that put a seal on a blue field. We call those flags, by the way, SOB flags, seals on a bed sheet.
Now, what are those flags? So almost half of all the state flags in the United States are a seal on a bed sheet. What do those flags have in common? Why is that such a popular design? Why is such an ineffective design so popular?
It really reflects the evolution of the adoption of state flags, which really took off in the last half of the 1800s. After the Civil War in 1876, I think only 9 states had flags. In fact, the idea of a state flag seemed to be contrary to the sense of what the Civil War had been fought about, that the result of the Civil War was the United States is, as opposed to the United States are, quoting Shelby Foote. But what that meant was the idea of a state flag might be in contrast or in opposition to the idea of one federal union. However, from 1876 to 1926, all the states adopted flags. In the run-up to the sesquicentennial of the United States in 1926, in that era, groups, nativist groups and hereditary groups and other parts of states urged states to adopt flags so that they would be part of the full set. There were some states like South Carolina that already had flags, but most of the states that didn't have flags would look to what flags already represented the state. And in most states, those were militia flags or regimental flags that had fought in the Civil War or the Spanish-American War. And a colleague of mine, Jim Farragon, flag scholar, likes to joke, and this won't go over very well in South Carolina, but the joke is there are so many flags with a seal on a blue background because the North won the Civil War. And that means those state flags that came out of regiments or states fighting for the North in the Civil War or fought in the Spanish-American War used those flags as the basis of their state flags. Now, there are some southern state flags that have a seal on a blue background, Louisiana, Kentucky, Virginia. But by and large, the state flags in the South are better designed than the flags in the North, and they are much more distinctive because they follow those basic principles of simplicity, meaningful symbolism, few colors, no lettering or seals, and distinctiveness. Oregon's state flag is another one of those seals on a bed sheet. It's got the escutcheon from the state seal in the middle of the flag. And just so you know what state it represents, it says State of Oregon over the top and 1859 on the bottom. On the back, though, is a beaver. Oregon is the beaver state. And so we have a two-sided flag. Now, the two-sided flag makes it very expensive to make. It has to be triple thickness because those items have to attach to the flag and not show through. It makes the flag much less successful when it's flying because it's very heavy. And because it's expensive and heavy, it's not used as much as it might be if it were a simpler design. We have bragging rights for being different, but just like we think it's a great idea not to have a sales tax in our state, we have some other foolish ideas that we've adopted. The state flag may simply represent that for us.
Well, and there's a beaver on it.
Oregon, the exploration of Oregon was promoted by the fur trade, and beavers were prolific in Oregon, certainly across Canada as well, and even in New York. New York, Canada, and Oregon all use the beaver as part of their iconography, and that's all based on the 18th and 19th century fur trades.
I think a beaver would be great if it were just on a plain background.
You're right. And
Right.
in fact, some people have proposed simply taking the reverse of the Oregon flag and making that the obverse as well. And that would be an effective flag. If the beaver were large enough and not just some blob on the flag, it would be more distinctive even among blue field flags. Flags that have writing on them not only violate the concept that flags are graphic symbols, not verbal symbols. Imagine a national flag that said France on it. You laugh at that. Why don't we laugh at that when we put the name of a state on a flag? And when you sew the letters of the state on the flag, on the other side they'll be backwards. So Kansas on the other side says Sasnak.
Well, can you tell us a little more about what's good about the South Carolina flag as it is, or what we understand it to be right now?
So let's take the principles of flag design and apply them to the South Carolina state flag. For someone who's not aware of this, and I can't imagine anyone in South Carolina not being aware of this, but your podcast may have a broad reach. So let me describe the South Carolina flag. On a blue field of dark blue, indigo blue, there is a white palmetto tree. Some people would just think it's a palm tree, but it's a palmetto tree in white in the very center, taking up most of the height of the flag. And in the upper left-hand corner is a crescent. Looks like a crescent moon, but it's just a crescent that it has its points oriented towards the upper left-hand corner. And that's in white as well. So the South Carolina flag truly only has three graphic elements: a blue field, a white palmetto tree, and a crescent. And each of those has deep meaning for South Carolina. Indigo for the indigo, the cultivation of indigo and creation of indigo dye in South Carolina. The palmetto tree goes back to Fort Moultrie in Charleston Harbor during the Revolution, where palmetto logs simply absorbed the British cannonballs and successfully defended Charleston. And the crescent actually derives from a symbol used by Colonel Moultrie's troops during the Revolutionary War. It had liberty written on it at the time, but that was the badge for Colonel Moultrie's troops, that crescent. And some believe that crescent echoes a piece of decorative armor called a gorget that 18th century British officers used, and then American officers used, as it was a curved piece that protected the neck as part of armor, and it evolved into simply decoration in uniforms. And you can actually see early portraits of George Washington as a British officer. He's wearing a gorget. So those three elements are memorable, they're easily drawn, they're easily constructed, and they create a great design for the South Carolina flag.
Well, I wanted to ask you, Ted, about uniformity, the process of finding a standardized design for the flag. And as you know, there's been some controversy in the last few months in South Carolina with a design that was put forward and now has been withdrawn, and now they're looking at some other designs. But why is uniformity important? Or is it important? Or is it a solution in search of a problem?
Most states have official specifications for their flag. And when it was found that there are no specifications for the state flag in South Carolina, folks decided to pursue that. Unfortunately, they didn't think about the artwork as much as they thought about the rationalization of the specifications. But I believe that this is all good news. I think what the recent controversy has shown is that everybody cares about that flag. And that's going to be really great, because I predict what's going to happen is they're going to come out with some better artwork, and people will say, I love it, or most people will say, I love it, and then that will become the standardized design for the state of South Carolina. I would have my advice if somebody asked me about that, but I believe you're going to come out the end of this process with a great uniform state flag for South Carolina.
So you're saying it's really good news that we have a controversy. We shouldn't just be upset. We should be pleased that we're having this dialogue and there's a public discussion about it.
Absolutely. In many states, the designs are so poor, people are militating to change the state flag. In South Carolina, you're just polishing a gem of a flag. You've got a great flag. And if I were asked, I'd say when the artwork is created for the standardized state flag of South Carolina, I recommend that the palmetto tree be a white silhouette with no detailing in it, no little lines showing the scales on the trunk or the detail on the fronds of the palmetto. It should be a solid white outline, which means it's easy to sew, to cut out of white fabric and sew onto the flag, and then sew all the way through and cut the white fabric off the other side. That is my recommendation, because the point of the flag is not to depict a palmetto. The point of the flag is to represent a palmetto. And the more stylized it is, the more effective it will be. Also, I would make sure that the crescent is of good size, because you want to be able to see that crescent as part of the flag.
Amen to that, Ted. I want to say that one of the things that I was upset about in the proposed design was that the crescent was so puny, and although these newer designs that are coming out have better looking palmetto trees, I want a strong, bold crescent.
We actually disagree about this.
I think a strong, bold crescent is a very positive piece of the South Carolina flag. It's an important piece of the flag, especially because when flags hang limp from a pole, say on an inside flag display, indoors flag display, the item that's at the top left corner is what you see most, because that's what's at the top of the pole and unobscured by any of the folds of the flag. The rest of the flag, even the palmetto, is going to get obscured by the folds of the flag halfway down. But that crescent at the top is going to be the key identifier for the South Carolina flag when it hangs limp from a pole.
Well, Ted, you also were involved with the new City of Columbia flag. Can you tell us a little bit about your involvement there? We've got a wonderful new city flag that people are very excited about. And for our audience that doesn't know, Ted Kaye was involved with that, and so was Lee Snellgrove, who many local Columbians know. But could you tell us a little bit about your involvement with the new Columbia flag and how it came to be?
Sure. The City of Columbia adopted its first city flag in 1912, and it was a seal on a blue background with cotton and corn surrounding it. Fast forward 100 years plus, cotton and corn are no longer the key ideas about Columbia. In fact, the key idea of Columbia is looking forward at this time. University town, state capital. Columbia deserves a better flag than a 1912 seal on a blue background. And so Lee Snellgrove and his group, the arts group in Columbia, promoted the concept of a new flag, asked me to come to Columbia, and I spoke to the arts and design community of Columbia and a workshop of civic leaders talking about the opportunity to create better symbolism for Columbia. And they took that to heart and ran a flag design competition, got a lot of great proposals. They ran into some stumbles along the way that delayed it a couple of years, but the outcome of the competition was a bold, new, very modern-looking flag that combines 3 different shades of blue with white and some black borders in the flag, or dark blue borders, and a 6-pointed star. And it reflects the wing. There's wing symbolism in Columbia, and the wing is shown on this flag in a very stylized way. That flag, I understand, is starting to fly in many places around Columbia, and there are stickers of it. And Columbia adopted that flag a couple of years ago, and it's a new era for flags in Columbia.
Well, Ted, I'm going to recommend that everybody listening buy a copy of Good Flag, Bad Flag, which is on Amazon now. And people, it's $3. There's no excuse not to own this. It's beautiful. Unfortunately, because this is an audio medium, we can't show you pictures on it, pictures of every flag, but they're beautiful pictures in it. And it's great analysis. And also visit NAVA.org, the North American Vexillology Association. Is there anything else you'd like us to add for you, Ted?
I think that's great, and we welcome anybody interested in flags to come to our website and even join NAVA. We have a wonderful suite of publications that we share with our members, and people interested in flags are finding us more and more every day.
Ted, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a great honor to have you on our podcast.
Thank you, and I'm really pleased that you're talking to me from a state with a great flag.
It's a little easier to tell us we've got a good one than it is to tell somebody they've got a bad one, right?
Well, I'll give you one little anecdote.
It's like a baby.
If you'd like it.
Absolutely.
When we did our survey of state flags, and then published the results, as you might imagine, it was a local story in every state. And the reporters that covered the results of our survey had 2 basic angles that they took. When we published that the flag was rated highly, the lead was, "Flag experts rate our flag highly. Aren't we great?" And when the ratings were low, which was most of the states, the lead was, "Flag experts say our flag is terrible. Aren't they idiots?"
Thank you so much, Ted. It was really great to have you. I love Ted Kaye. I could
That
talk
man's
to
a
him
national
for hours,
treasure.
but then we would basically just have to create a flag podcast.
I kept wanting to call him Teddy Kaye, but I don't know him that well.
He would have loved it with your southern drawl.
We'll have him back once he reaches friend of the show status.
And I really wanted to bring up the beaver again. I was real disappointed that
I'm proud of this group that nobody burst out laughing.
it was so there.
It's very mature, everybody.
I get the
Good
feeling you
start.
walk
And then I was going to suggest replacing the beaver with a Subaru.
Zoom, zoom.
I get the feeling you walk in Ted's house and talk about flags, and his wife just rolls her eyes and walks into the back room.
All geniuses are misunderstood by their spouses. I'm sure everybody in this room can relate.
Yeah, that's your excuse.
Just kidding.
Man knows his flag, so.
Today, we're bringing this podcast to you from the Jam Room recording studio here in Columbia, South Carolina. We picked the Jam Room because I've been coming here for years to record with bands, to record with other people's bands. We've helped people record jingles here, and it turns out it's perfect for podcasts also. So if you're interested in setting up a podcast, you don't know how to do it or where you're going to record it, don't do it in your basement or your kitchen or your home office. You got to do it right here with real microphones, with amazing gear, the great Zach Thomas. So from a comfortable environment to the killer gear selection here, amps, guitars, wonderful keyboards, to the professional staff, the Jam Room is your best bet for all of your audio production needs. All right, guys, I want to introduce our listeners to a new segment. Certainly new, because this is the inaugural podcast. This is a little segment we call Big Questions from Little People. And today, the big question comes from my daughter, 6-year-old Katrina.
Daddy, why is there so much dead mommies and daddies in kids' movies?
She said that with a little too much joy, didn't she?
Katrina does everything with joy.
When's that going to happen to you, Daddy?
Hadn't crossed my mind.
Do I get my own Disney movie when you die, Dad?
Is she plotting?
Somebody wants to be a princess.
We were literally like sitting down and watching one of the hundreds of Disney Plus movies, and Katrina's just like, why? You know, she asked me this. And of course, I thought it was funny. I kind of tweeted it, but I got a lot of serious answers. One was, well, it's not an interesting story if the main character doesn't have any adversity. And I guess I could try to explain that to my 6-year-old about narrative. Why do you guys think there's so many dead parents in Disney movies? I mean, it's pretty. You can't have a wicked stepmother, for example, without a dead parent. You can't have troubled orphans, and I mean everything, not just the cartoons, like the Apple Dumpling Gang, Oliver the cat. I mean, there's always an orphan.
Little Orphan Annie.
Yeah,
The most famous.
Yeah, I guess if you have parents, you get it easy in life.
Yeah.
Only way to have a bad time as a kid.
Yeah, I think maybe the goal is to make children appreciate their parents.
Ooh, that's good. Kind of devious too, right?
You know, I mean, it seems to me, and you know, it's been a while since I've reviewed the classics, the Disney classics.
What?
But yeah, I know you find that shocking.
You don't watch
You and Jen
Bambi.
don't sit around and watch?
You don't sit at home with scotch and watch Bambi.
It makes me cry. I can't do it. It's just a tearjerker. But you know, the what I think of is, I mean, you have the same sort of plot device with a lot of superhero movies and comic books, right? So like think, you know, Superman, orphan, Batman, orphan, right? And so it's this catalyst for the character to go in search of the identity that they will ultimately assume. And so it's sort of like, you know, the initial act, right, that sets the plot into motion. And so, yeah, I mean, it's part adversity, but I think it's also this sort of device.
Tees up a journey.
It does, yeah, a sense of soul searching and looking for your identity.
What do you think, Jessica?
I think it's just that, kids don't have a whole lot of reference points. And so they can really identify with my mom's gone or my dad's gone or that kid doesn't have a mom or dad versus, any other kind of, trial or tribulation. Kids just can't really comprehend it when they're 3, 4, 5, 6. But I don't have a mom or I don't have a dad or that poor kid doesn't have a mom. That really relates.
And then all of a sudden, oh man, my mom's not that bad.
I
I don't know. Maybe they really already know kids hate their parents for sure, and they're just kind of building on that early.
I'm really pushing that.
Well, one theory I heard was
That
I kind
rationale.
of like the dark mean theory. I think another theory that somebody threw out on Facebook, an older person said, well, a lot of these movies were made in the 40s and 50s after World War II, so a lot of people were missing a dad or missing parents, and that again gave a relatability to it.
And Disney never looked back.
They just kept killing them off.
They're ruthless.
Disney is definitely the number one killer of parents.
But no, like
in
seriously,
fiction.
it's like Dumbo's mom died. Bambi had no parents. Fox and the Hound, like the fox.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pervasive.
That and talking animals.
People, right.
Yeah, and the people, yeah, absolutely. Every Disney movie has a dead parent or a talking animal.
I gotta admit, I had never thought about this until Katrina brought it up.
Well, there are a lot of them. Tune in for the next Big Questions from Little People, where she asks me, what is the bad thing that animals did to get into the zoo?
I think we're the ones who did the bad thing. Yeah, that's
right.
more about us than them.
Well, moving on to our next segment, we're going to do this. It's a new year, although it's basically February now. It's a new year, and we're all going to do one endorsement. Basically, tell us about something you like right now. I can go first, or somebody else can. A book, or a movie, or a film, or a band. Laurin.
I've been trying to read more books lately, and I'm not a big book reader because my mom has told me for years now that the internet broke my brain, and I'm pretty sure she's right. But in the last year, I've made a concerted effort to read more books, and the one that I read most recently was a memoir called, oh gosh, it's by Jim Gaffigan's wife, and I just forgot the name of it.
Yeah.
It's called When Life Gives You Pears. That's it. And it's about her journey with a brain tumor that's shaped like a pear. And I listened to it. Rhodes actually got me hooked on audiobooks many years ago. And it's just fantastic. It's really funny. I'd also like to endorse Jessica's boots.
Oh, yeah.
Very
Thank you.
stylish.
It's a pretty sweet red boots on right now that y'all can't see, but you'll just have to take my word for it.
Not a
They're
great
awesome.
endorsement for a podcast if nobody can see.
Well,
I'm just saying.
Well,
I told Rhodes he had a great face for a podcast.
that was fantastic. Zach, what are you into these days?
Bahamas Sad Hunk.
Bahamas Sad Hunk?
I have no idea what that is.
Record came out like 3 weeks ago.
Oh, I'm checking
It's
it out.
Killer.
I thought that was like code for something.
No, Bahamas. The record is Sad Hunk.
What kind of music is it?
Guitar pop, but not guitar pop like you would think. It's awesome. It's just very happy. Tap your toe to it. You can't stop singing the melodies in your head. You're gonna love it. This is one of the few records that I've told tons of people about, and everybody
Loves it.
bar none, has come back and gone, oh my God.
Well, guys, I can tell you if Zach Thomas recommends an album to me, I run, not walk to buy it. Or that's what I used to say when we bought CDs. Now I rush to my phone to
Download it.
Yes. Well, thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us this week on Asylum South. We'll be back
Chris
for...
didn't do his endorsement.
I don't have an endorsement. I really don't. I didn't know we were doing.
bro.
I didn't know we were doing this
I
segment.
was ready for that. I wasn't ready for the State House.
Well, that's all right. But see, it's okay. It's something to work in. We don't
Chris
all...
and I couldn't remember the name of it.
We'll
I
just-
love this book so much I can't even remember what
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
called.
yeah. Right. By the way, everyone read this book about cancer. Why couldn't you? Zach had like a happy thing with a great rock album. I'm excited about. Lauren
Dead
wants me.
parents and cancer.
Lauren wants me to read a cancer book.
I thought it was going to be a tasty book about pears. but no.
Chris, what you're failing to understand is
Fucking death.
it's a funny cancer book.
Yes, exactly.
It's a funny cancer book.
That's right. Thank you, Rhodes.
Putting the humor back into cancer where it belongs, apparently.
Cancer, what a gas.
Well, I'm glad we didn't end at that false ending. But thanks for joining us this week on the Asylum South podcast, and we'll be back next week.
Bye, y'all.
See ya.
Asylum South was recorded and engineered at the Jam Room Studio in Columbia, South Carolina, the fabulous Jam Room Studio. Sound engineered by Zach Thomas. Theme music by me, Rhodes Bailey, Spencer Collins, and Zach Thomas. Contributors are me, Laurin Manning Gandy, Chris Kinney, Jessica Lathren, and Mike McCauley. Find us on the World Wide Web at www.asylumsouth.com. We're at Asylum South on Twitter, Asylum South on Facebook. Subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you liked Asylum South, share the pod with your friends and family. Special thanks to Ted Kaye, and until next time, this is Asylum South.